Hello, and welcome to another amazing episode of TMC, where we are here to help you take your relationship from surviving to thriving.
If this is your first time joining us on today, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button, hit that notification bell so you won't miss any episodes.
Today on TMC, we have Ayanna Hall with the Seasons of Marriage.
Everyone, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Ayanna Hall. I am a pharmacist by training, turned housewife, stay-at-home mom. Now, after years of navigating that, going from surviving to thriving, being a housewife and a stay-at-home mom, now actually help other wives and wives-to-be thrive as well, to get the clarity, confidence, and connections that they need to live the lives and have the marriages that they want. I love it now that I finally embraced the role and realized that it wasn't a less than. I wasn't giving up something. I had a career, which was great. And then my husband, his career kind of took off, and I have 3 daughters. I have one who was only 28 months, and then we had twins.
Wow.
So our lives kind of, turned on itself. So I was just trying to navigate it all and trying to balance it all. And it was like, you know what? It wasn't working. So God put on my heart to stay home, and then some battles with my husband trying to understand what that looked like. And then, once we kind of both got on the same page, we've been on that same page ever since.
Really?
Awesome. How long have you been a stay-at-home mom?
Almost 9 years now.
Wow. That is awesome. Yes. That's awesome. And I'm glad you talked about that, because I think that a lot of women do find that hard to transition. And the idea you spoke about, thinking that it's less than, when it's a whole lot of work. It's not like you don't have a job anymore. You have a whole bunch of jobs now. So in your coaching or in your working with women, do you kind of help them navigate this same process?
Yes, I do. But I also help is what is their unique process? What is their unique journey? And realize that it may not look like mine. You may enjoy working. You may, enjoy that. And I'm supporting that too, because I had a career as well. So it doesn't have to look exactly the way my path looked. Whatever it is that you or they want to thrive in, and how they want to make sure that they are building the unique marriage that God created them to have, I'm there to support them and making sure that they are being the wives they want to be, so they can then have the marriages they want.
Absolutely. How long have you been married?
14 years. We'll celebrate 15 years next month.
All right. Congratulations in advance.
Yes.
Awesome. So you have 3 children. You've been married for almost 15 years, and you coach wives and wives-to-be, right?
Yes.
So thinking about yourself as a wife-to-be, if we can go back there for a little bit, go back 15 years, what is the one piece of advice you wish you knew back then as a wife-to-be?
It's okay to not have the picture perfect ideals of what your marriage should look like, because I think you go into it with these ideals of, okay, because, planning the wedding, you have this, kind of mindset. And then you go into thinking that you'll have this marriage that you planned in your head without actually taking the time to plan it with your husband to be. And, your ideas and his ideas, and then you're married and those ideas don't match. And then you're trying to now figure it out. So I think as a wife-to-be, you need to take more time to actually be intentional about planning your marriage than you are just planning the day that you get married.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And I definitely agree. And that's a great piece of advice for the TMC listeners, because sometimes we do get caught up in the hoopla of that day, and it has to be perfect, because many of us have dreamed of it for our whole lives. So everything has to go off without a hitch, but not taking into consideration what is life going to look like afterwards. That's a great piece of advice. We talked about the piece of advice you would have liked to know before as a wife-to-be. So let's jump forward and talk about lessons that you have learned as a wife, lessons you've learned, lessons that your marriage has taught you specifically.
One is learning how to truly listen, because I know, especially as women, we like to talk. So we have a whole lot to say. And in a conversation, it is not a monologue, it's a dialogue.
Right.
So learning to truly like listen and not just listen to words, like listen to body language, listen to when things aren't being said, and realize that, okay, there's things being said when nothing's being said. And that took me years to learn. And realizing that, especially with my husband, he is very thoughtful and analytical. So he processes a lot before he speaks. So for me, I'm talking and talking, and then he's not saying anything. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you think? And he's like, well, I need a minute. And I'm like, well, he should have, while I was talking, he should have processed, because I was processing and realizing that we don't, think and act the same. So realizing that, communication is key, but listening is a really big part of communication. That was a lesson that took me years to learn. And even now I have to be mindful of when I'm kind of going. And then he's kind of looking, I'm like, okay, well, maybe I need to pause, because he hasn't had time to process what I've just, unloaded.
Right.
And now I want feedback, but I need to give him the time to actually give me feedback.
Absolutely.
And that's good. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is an issue with marriages. Matter of fact,
oh yeah, we definitely had that issue for many years.
We deal with that and we still, every now and then, same thing. I'm trying to process something.
Yeah.
And while I'm processing, she's like, what are you thinking? What's wrong? And it's like, give me a minute. And sometimes I try to get out of the way, or go into another room, or go into the office to try to think, because she thinks something wrong. So I think that is really that is really a good set of advice for the spouse, whether male or female, understanding that, that whole aspect of giving your spouse time to process, what they're thinking, because some people analytical, people think different, but some people are very thoughtful when they think. And I think that's something that we should learn to appreciate, because it's actually a good thing.
Absolutely. And I think what she's talking about, I thought about us, because we had the same thing for many, many years, because that's me. I'm talking about it, and I'm going 99 miles a minute. And I'm like, by the time I pause, you ought to have something to say. And it's like, he's like, no, give me a minute, or I need time. And I'm like, okay. And even though we've been married for a long time, it's still times now, like you said, I have to be intentional about that. It's still times now when I have to say to myself, okay, maybe he's thinking, maybe he's processing. And that doesn't always come very quickly. So from what I hear you're saying, and what we both all have to do, is kind of, you're learning to understand the behavior of your spouse, and how that we're processing things differently, because we are different. We're two different people. We have two different ways of thinking things, processing things. I'm talking it out. You need quiet and figuring it out in your head before you come up with a solution. So that's definitely good.
I think another lesson that actually couples with that is the idea, or the true understanding, that you are learning each other over time. And things change, and we have to be adaptable, realizing that there are core things in your marriage and about you that are the same. Yes, there are core things, your moral standards. There's a lot of things that kind of remain, that you will always love, or like about a person. But over time, as we grow, as we mature, as we have different experiences, both as individuals and as a couple, what we like, how we communicate, the things that we say, how long it takes us to process things, all of those will change. And we have to give each other the grace and the space to allow to change, but also study your spouse enough to realize, okay, these aren't the same. So I need to pay closer attention. I need to watch more. I need to speak more, realizing that if you are with somebody who talks a lot and you don't talk that much, the other person may feel like you don't have anything to say, or you don't care, or you don't those things, which is not true. But that means that maybe you need to speak a little more, just to kind of chime in, so they know they're heard, and paid attention to. And also the spouse who may talk a lot needs to know sometimes you need to give more space in the conversation. But I think learning each other over time is so important, because we do grow and we mature together. And if you want to, like I always tell people, I want to be the couple I see out, the couple that they look like they've been together for 30, 40 years. They're just with each other, and there's a look, and then they've had a whole conversation and no one said a word. I was like, I want that. But that took years of work and learning and growing together. So I'm, encourage other wives as well, especially wives to be, to study your spouse, study him, what he likes, how he's changed you so that you both grow and go together. I think what I love about like the similarities is that, yeah, they keep you tied together. They keep you working towards those same goals, but how you get to those goals will be different. Yeah. Your approaches are different. And that's necessary too. I can't remember. Someone told me one day, they were like, if you have two people in a relationship that are exactly the same, one of those people isn't needed. And I was like, oh,
wow.
And then, but when I thought about it, it was because like, if everything about you is exactly the same, you have the same thoughts, you have the same way of doing things, you don't challenge each other, you don't push each other because you see everything the same way. So you're going along life doing it the same way. I think that healthy kind of friction, it helps to be like, helps you to challenge each other, cause you to kind of question, okay, your thought process, the way you're moving about things. And I think that's healthy. Like my husband and I, we have, we share a lot of the same things, but we are like night and day. The glass is always half full. I mean, he can find a rainbow in any situation. And I'm like, don't you see a rain? Don't you see the storm? Aren't we getting wet right here? And he's like, but we can get an umbrella and it'll be fine. And I'm like, but it's raining on me though. But over the years, I've learned to appreciate that because I need to not always look at the negative space. And he's learned to appreciate the fact that, okay, well, not everything about the situation is good. So how do I analyze it in a way that's healthy while still keeping who he is, his perspective, his way of looking at things, but taking a healthy way of looking at it overall? Because I mean, in marriage, we also reveal things about each other, and we, are a great reflection of each other, and we should give the most positive light, but we also see the blind spots that our spouse doesn't see. And in order for us to do that, we have to be honest, and we also have to be looking at it from a different perspective.
Absolutely. So true. So true. So we talked a little bit about different keys to growing, and you talked about learning and studying your spouse. So I think that would be one of them, but I was getting ready to ask you, what are some key components you think to a healthy, thriving marriage?
Because of my faith in God, I would say prayer. That is essential for me, and essential to kind of make sure you are staying on one accord in that. I would also say investing in your marriage, whatever that looks like in that season, whether that is investing in individual therapy, because everybody got stuff that you've talked about, stuff that you've never talked about. And I think we need to make sure that we are making sure we are healthy in that way, but also, pouring into your marriage as a couple, whether you get a coach, whether you go to marriage counseling yourself, or whether you do marriage retreats, all those things. Investing in your marriage is important because as you go through different seasons, you'll need to grow, and there's different tools and things you need as you go through different things that people who have either been there or experienced that already can help you with. And I think one more thing would be making sure that you make time for each other, whatever that looks like in your season, because whether like if you have littles and, newborns, that's a season, your kids are toddlers, that's a season, your kids are, older, or you don't have kids and you have a busy career, whatever it is, making sure that you're intentional about making time and being okay that the time you make for each other doesn't have to look like somebody else's time. Everybody, likes different things, and how they connect is different, and that's okay. So just making sure you're being intentional about the time that you do connect is important to stay healthy.
Sean and I guess when we were younger, everything had to be, big and extravagant and spend all this money. I mean, but now we do little simple things like just driving and, go and get a snow cone or something like that, something and we'll go to the park and just sit in the car. It's kind of, I kind of feel some kind of way sometimes. Sometimes I kind of feel bad, people walking and exercising and we eating snow cones sitting in the car, but I mean, but yeah, those times, making those times no matter what.
It's come up multiple times already from the beginning when you talked about transitioning to being a stay-at-home mom. And then you're talking about prayer and being intentional. And then you're talking about spending time together and being intentional about spending time together. And over and over and over, you've already mentioned about seasons, because it's important for everyone to know whatever season of your life you're in, everything you do is going to look different. And I think sometimes we can get hung up on that. And we're looking at someone else who's who's in a different season of their life, and we want that, but they don't have the same things that we have. You know, they're empty nesters and we have toddlers, or they have toddlers and we're empty nesters, or however it is. You know, one person's in school, you're growing a career, you're getting a degree, or whatever it is, you're growing a business. So it's important for the listeners to take that, because that's come up already several times. You've mentioned that to us, being mindful of the season that you are in and knowing what works for you and your relationship in that season.
But even let's dig into that, because, you know, even going into the, you know, the different types of seasons, you know, in life, there's seasons change. That's long seasons. I mean, some seasons is not within a year. I mean, when you have a child, I mean, your season changed for the next 18 years. So let's talk about that. So what was your experience with that? I mean, you said you have 3 children, and when you and your husband, it was just you and him. Then you go from 1 child, then 2 children, and 3. I mean, that's a whole slew of seasons right there. Let's talk about that.
It was hard because, like you said, we went from, because when we first got married, my husband was still in graduate school, but I was a pharmacist. So, I mean, I made good money. So we did whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. I would look at my schedule. We had like a 3 or 4 day weekend. Okay, let's book a flight somewhere. And because he was in school, he was flexible. So he just bring his work with us. So like we would kind of go and do all the things. And then we had our first daughter, and you know, couldn't do all the things, or she would have to come with us, and we never lived by family. So it was hard, but we were like, okay, this is where we at. We'll just adjust. And then when we had the twins, we went from 1 to 3. Ooh. So that was like, that sent me into a whole nother world. And it sent our marriage through something too, because I had become so focused on being a mom. My being a wife got put to the back burner.
Wow.
And my husband had to come to me. He's like, babe, I love these kids. I know you love these kids. However, I'm still here. Our marriage is still here. We need to reprioritize. So it hurt, honestly, at first. I'm like, well, these are my babies, and I had these, and this is supposed to be my focus. But I had to realize, and that's when also the ability to see how me being a housewife was first before the mom part, because in order for me to truly be the best mom I could be, I had to be a healthy wife and had a healthy marriage that they were under. So that took some adjustment, because, and like you said, learning what that intentional time looked like. We had littles, we didn't live by family. So we weren't taking these trips. I wasn't going anywhere. So that meant, okay, once the girls went to bed, we had quality time at home, or like we loved going to get ice cream. So my oldest would go off to school, and we'd have the twins in the back in the car seat sleep, and we're in the car eating.
That's awesome.
And it was okay, because we realized this is where we were. This is the time that we had. So let's just make that intentional and not, like you said, compare the fact that I could see that all these people still taking these trips and, doing this and doing that. That wasn't the season I was in. So I had to just, be okay with being where I was, and just embracing that, and, but trying to find those, those joys and in the midst of it.
Oh yeah, a mouthful, definitely.
That's great.
And it's amazing to me. And I think in the last few years, I've realized this myself. It's amazing to me how much the little things, like you said, eating ice cream in the car while the kids are in the back, those little things mean so much, because that time invested is what matters. And we think, like Cedric said earlier, we've always thought, and I guess that's the picture that's painted for us by society. We think that it has to be, a vacation here and a vacation there. And those things are great too, because we've enjoyed those. But the moments, just we in the car eating snow cones, and he says something goofy or does something goofy, or I do, and it's just like you just laughing so hard. And those are times that are so important, and they mean so much to you, having that togetherness, and you feel different. It makes your relationship feel different. different. And I think that's very important for the listeners to understand. We never want to compare to someone else. We want to look at the season that we're in and enjoy every little thing that is available to us. And in the shifting of our lives and the shifting of our seasons, we can still be intentional about spending time together, even if it's just us. You know what? Everybody go to bed. We're going to sneak downstairs and pop some popcorn and watch a movie, whatever it is, just to make that quality time. You mentioned this a few minutes ago, and I'm backing back a little bit because you said your husband was like, babe, I love these kids. I know you love these kids. And the moment you said that, I was like, yes, we got to talk about that, because I think that it's important for the listeners, whether they're male or female, for them to be able to express that, you know, and not to hold that in when life is changing. And whether it's children, whether it's a career, whether it's school, whatever it is, when things are feeling different and you're feeling left out, or you're feeling like you're not getting that intentional time, is this definitely good to speak up about that.
Absolutely.
And I think it goes with, it's a part of communication. It truly is a part of knowing when to bring it up, because he didn't bring it up like in the middle of a situation, or in the middle of me making dinner and I'm trying to no, it was, all I know is it was a calm time when he brought it up. Absolutely. But realizing that your needs won't get met if you don't voice them. Like, we're not mind readers. Absolutely. And we can't expect our spouses to read our minds, because it's not fair to them and it's not fair to us, because your expectations will not get met because they don't know what they are. Right. So and it takes some humility on your own to be like, okay, I'm not feeling loved, or I'm not feeling attended to, or I'm not feeling, and being able to verbalize that takes courage as well from the person who is even speaking it. But it's necessary for the other person to see, okay, how can I love my husband, or how can I love my wife better? It's not you're not saying that, well, you're not doing this. It's not, you're not accusing somebody. No, he's like, no, I love them and everything, but I need to make sure we're good. So he's not saying you're being a bad wife and I didn't take it that way, because that's not how he came at me with it. So that's important too. When you're feeling something, or you don't feel like you're getting attention, you can't come at it as, well, you're not giving me attention, because all the other person's going to do is defend themselves. Well, I'm doing, because I could have listed to him the 50 things I am doing during the day to why we're not spending time together. But because he didn't come to me trying to accuse me of something, or trying to tell me I wasn't doing something, I could receive it from, okay, my husband needs something from me. How can I help meet that? And then he got me a house cleaner, because he helped. So it wasn't that he just said, I need for us to be together and you need to figure it out. He was like, no, okay, let me take something off your plate. Let's get somebody to clean the house so you don't have that to do. And we did some other things that he allowed me to get some space, so that now I can focus on us and the kids.
Awesome.
That is awesome. I'm glad we went in this direction, because I see this happen a lot too. So for example, you have, let's say, back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, most of the time the mother was at the house taking care of the children and the father was working. But now here it is, 2021. Now most households have the husband and the wife working. But one of the problems I see, especially with some of my brothers, is the aspect of, okay, she's working, I'm working, but you still expect her to do everything.
Correct.
And it's like, it's not even fair. And what you said about your husband, he's seen an issue and he's like, okay, you know what? I want to spend more time with my wife, so I'm going to, let's hire someone to clean the house. I mean, so he didn't make the problem worse. He solved the problem. He had a solution for the problem. So I really love that.
I would actually say also on that, I can go, this is from the woman trying to do all the things. I fought him at first, because I'm like, this is my house. I don't need somebody to come in here and clean it, which makes no sense to me now. I get that now that I'm not in that space, but I'm like, by him doing that, I get now that he was trying to help. I get now that he was like, well, I don't have time to clean the house, but I'm going to help you get the house clean, because I know it's important for us to have a clean house. But I looked at it as, well, I can't keep my own house clean. you know, and I can't, you know, I'm supposed to be able to do this thing and I'm supposed to wear my superwoman cape well and fly and do it all. But we shouldn't have to. And I tell wives all the time, take the cape off, sis. Just take it off. It is not yours to wear all the time. There will be moments when, yes, we have to put the cape on and get it done. Absolutely. But that's not our lifestyle. That should be a moment's in time. And just, you know, it's okay to get help. Help is not a 4-letter word. I know it has 4 letters in it, but it's not a 4-letter word.
Right. I like that. Yes. I like that. So when we're thinking about you and working with wives and wives-to-be, what do you think are some common misconceptions that some wives-to-be may have?
That they already understand all it is that the wife life will be. There's a lot of unknowns, no matter how well you prepare. So I try my best to prepare wives-to-be, absolutely. But I also give them tools and different things that they'll need for when. You know, I like to call it like the wifey toolbox, because you're going to go through things, you're going to see things, you're going to experience things that you may not have been prepared for. But if you have some basic fundamental tools to use for those, you know, unknown situations, it's easier for you to navigate them and then gain new tools that you're going to need in that season into the next. So it's so important not to feel like, okay, you will know how everything is going to play out or how, you know, I mean, life is going to happen. I mean, no matter what you do. So making sure that as a wife-to-be, and even as a wife, you realize that there's going to be some things that come out of left field on you. Like, okay, well, what do I do with this? But if there's some core basic things and there's some, you know, clarity that you have about what your role is in your home and kind of what your goals are in your marriage and what your personal goals are as well, it'll help you to navigate the changes and the different things better.
All right. So because you mentioned the toolbox. So let's pull out the flashlight to you to just show us a couple of tools, a couple of items inside that box.
First tool would be a actual planner. Like, because we have in our minds everything that's going on. We have in our minds the to-dos. We have in our minds what our husbands are doing. We have in our minds what we're doing. But we don't really know all the to-dos kind of, and then in a visual way. So I honestly feel that every wife, every household should have a paper, either it's a calendar, a planner, something that you look at together to be like, okay, this is what we got going on holistically. Yeah, you don't need to put everybody's every second of the day kind of routines, but okay, this is kind of what we have going on. This is kind of what we're working towards. This will be kind of what we want to do in the next few months. That way that you both can truly have a clear idea and picture of exactly what's on your plate. Is it too much? You know, because that's also another thing. Like, if you got too much on your plate, then you can't be really attentive to your spouse because you don't really have time. You're exhausted, you're overwhelmed. So that's one of the major things in there. And I know even if it's digital, some people like digital, as long as you can see it and it's not just in your mind, that's a great tool that I think every wife and marriage should have.
I love that because I think that's so important, because sometimes one person may be about to lose their mind because they have all this load. So having it on paper, you can see exactly where you are. I love that.
Absolutely. And I think that would also help avoid some of those mishaps when we're not where we supposed to be when we supposed to be there. And well, I have a meeting where I didn't know they had a recital and all of those type of things. That's awesome. That's good. So the first thing is a planner.
Right.
What's one other thing in Toolbox?
What we got in there? I would also say that you need to make time to like have check-ins. And this is not just checking in on your to-do. My husband and I call it our marriage check-in. So he'll be like, how am I doing? And that's an opportunity for us to not unload on, well, you're not doing X, Y, or Z. It's the opportunity first to affirm. So I start with, affirmation of affirming, things that, I think we're doing well, or he's doing well, or ways I'm feeling loved. And then it's like, and then he's like, okay, well, what can I do? What is one thing I can do for you? And that gives me an opportunity to be like, okay, well, I would like if you did this. And these check-ins are at, however you want. They can be they used to be on date nights, but over time that we've been together, sometimes we'll just be on the couch and he'll be like, how am I doing? But at first we started out as date nights as a way for us to kind of really check in and see, okay, how am I doing? And what is one way that I can love you better? Not in a way that's a negative. And I think that's one thing that has to be you have to be mindful of. Yeah, we can always do better. We're not going to do anything perfectly. So we can't, kind of, beat down on our spouses about what you're not doing right. Start with affirming them on what they are doing right, how you are feeling loved, how they are showing up in your marriage. And then give them one thing that they could do better in that way, that in something that actually is attainable, something that they can actually do. And then your next check-in, add the next thing. Whatever is in your mind. And then I do this and he does the same, and I do the same thing for him. So it's a way for you to check in, a way for you to affirm each other, because you need that. We have enough things in the world kind of telling us what we're not doing right and how we could do better. And half that is in our own minds half the time. But if you can affirm each other, but then also like give practical ways for the other person to love you well or love you better, that's always a good tool to have.
Awesome. So we have a planner and we have an intentional check-in. Is there one more you can think of? One more tip for the toolbox?
Okay, I would say from a wife's perspective, and it's just going to be a practical thing. What you wear at home matters.
Okay.
And this was a come to Jesus moment for me too, because I'm comfortable. I'm at home and nobody's seeing me, and what, I'm with these kids or I'm whatever. So trust me, I'm throw myself under this bus. But I'm sitting here, if I can look at myself in the mirror like, but your husband is not gonna say nothing. Right. He ain't gonna say a word. But we know when we can be a little bit more together. Do I mean you got to put full diva wear on, hair whipped, face laid? No, if that's not what you like. But if that's what you like, do that too. Whatever makes you comfortable, whatever your husband likes. But you can have a together sweatsuit. Like I literally had to go through like my lounge wear to be like, okay, those sweatpants have lived too long. Let them go. That t-shirt, it's the neck is this way, just let it go. It's something that seems so simple, but if we think about it, like we want to be appealing to our spouses, just be together. It doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't be diva wear, but have sweatpants that fit, a shirt that hasn't been through all the babies and looks like, now the babies is grown, but it looks like you still have babies. You know exactly what I mean? So I would say that's a great tool. And then revisit it every once in a while, because you actually will feel more attractive when you feel more attractive. Like, when you feel good about yourself, when I'm like, okay, I'm together, I'm like, okay, I see you. And I know my husband sees me, and that gets me in a better frame of mind to when we want to see each other, if you know what I mean. And it's my husband and I talk about it a lot. He's really into sports. So, and he travels a lot for work, and he'll like get dressed, and I'm in sweatpants and a t-shirt, and he's like in a suit, and I'm like, oh, I see you. But if I see him, so does somebody else. So I have to be very aware that I'm not the only one with eyes that can see my husband. So when he's in the world with these, people who are fully glammed and fully all of that, not that I'm in competition, but I am fully aware that, okay, how I show up matters to my husband, and so therefore it should matter to me. They out in full battle gear, and I look like I just woke up and went back to sleep, and the same thing. Then, we have to just be more mindful, because we have to just be more attentive, and we realize that, especially with men, they're very visual. So it doesn't have to, you don't have to, do all the, the diva wear, as I would say, but being together actually makes, and when you feel more together, your husband will feel that energy too. And it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would say this, just to add to that, just when it does happen, let them know you enjoyed the eye candy. Because you let them know this for the man and for the woman. You let them know that you enjoyed the eye candy. You'll get some more candy. You get some more candy because that's what
it's true.
We want. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be appreciated. We want to be handsome and beautiful to our spouse. Absolutely. So we have to even being transparent and communicate that. Right. Throw some whistle at us, whatever. Whatever you do. So.
It's definitely a good nugget for the sisters, for the women, for the wives, because it's easy. I know you were talking about the t-shirts and everything. I'm like, this t-shirt ain't even the same color anymore,
Exactly.
and that's the one that felt the most comfortable, like you wearing it 2-3 times a week. So yeah. Now. So that's definitely important. And it does. We know when we look good, we feel good. So right. Yeah, it's twofold. It's good for the spouse as well as for yourself, for morale, for energy, just for connecting. Yep. And you're right. Let them know you enjoyed the eye candy. Because when you let me know you enjoy the eye candy, you might get some more candy.
Hello.
I like it. I like it.
Work, whatever, like as a wife, it's especially as wives, it is so important that we are intentional about making sure that we are taking care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because it is so easy to get focused on taking care of your husband or taking care of your kids or doing the career or whatever the many hats that we wear. But truly, in order to do any of them well, we have to make sure we are taking care of ourselves well. That's not selfish. Mm-mm. It's self-care and it's self-love, and it's something that is so important. So that is one thing that I am so advocating wives to do, to make sure that they are taking well care of themselves, making sure that they are incorporating their husbands in their self-care, making mm-hmm. sure that they are also like encouraging their husbands to take care of themselves and do the things that they need to do, because we want to, be better together, but we have to make sure we are better. Yes. As individuals. So that's one of the things that I would definitely want all the listeners to know. And that's one thing that I advocate for as a coach of wives and wives-to-be, because the only person you can change is you.
Right.
So you got to show up as your best self. So if you're putting in the time, the effort, and the investment into yourself, it will show up in your marriage as well.
Absolutely. Ayanna, if someone wanted to connect with you and what you're doing, where should they go?
You can find me on all the things at beyondcommitted.com. You can find me on my website. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, although I don't tweet as much. I am actively on Instagram and YouTube at Beyond Committed.
Awesome. On behalf of the TMC family, we would like to thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and adding value to us all.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you. We enjoyed you. We hope you enjoyed this episode of TMC today. And if you did, go ahead and subscribe. Click the like button and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified each time we upload a video. And if you're listening on iTunes, rate the podcast and leave a review. That helps us get the word out. And we want to invite you to head on over to our leadership podcast, Lead to Greatness, where my husband is interviewing entrepreneurs and great leaders every week.
So we want to thank you for joining us today on TMC. Looking forward to hanging out with you again on next week as we continue to help you take your relationship
from surviving to thriving.
Bye. See you next week.